All right, Melissa,
Yes.
talk to me. So one of the beauties of the Epic Wives experiment is we get to take all these women through this series of experiments and see them experience transformation, change, and make progress and level up in their relationship. But one of the frustrating things on my end is I don't get to see many individual experiences. I just kind of see the collective experience. And so I have zero context into what your experience was like doing the Epic Wives experiment as an individual. And I would love if you would just kind of tell me, paint a picture for me, why you wanted to do the Epic Wives experiment in the first place. Like what was going on in your life and what made you go, this is something I want to do.
Okay. So I have been married for almost 20 years. It's 20 years this year. So we are pretty far into marriage.
Yeah.
Um, we've had a pretty hard marriage. Beginning, the beginning of our marriage was a roller coaster, to say the least.
Bit of a bumpy ride.
It's been a really bumpy ride, and we've had, there's a lot of history between how my husband was raised and how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that meshing and, you know, figuring out how to bring in the background of two very different people. And um, the last 3.5 years, my husband and I have been going to marriage counseling to
Awesome.
get to a better place than where we were. And so when I came across the information for the Epic Wives experiment, I thought, okay, this is good for me to
Yeah.
get where I need to be for myself and our relationship to that next level of where I want us to be.
I love that.
So um, the last 3 years, we had a lot of trauma in our family. And that kind of opened up some trauma wounds between my husband and I that had not been discussed in our years of marriage, and trauma wounds for my husband from him growing up.
Yeah.
So for me to find this and the work that we've done the last 3 years, it brought us to that level of where we
Gotcha.
both want to be.
I feel like this is such a relatable story, even though I don't know if you feel like it's relatable, but working with couples every single day, I feel like this is totally relatable. Like one of the most difficult things about getting married is you do bring all of these dynamics and these experiences and the pain that you've experienced from past relationships and from your upbringing. And you try exactly what you said, you try and mesh it all together. And sometimes it doesn't fit so easily. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable. And despite really loving this person, it can be a really bumpy road. So props to you for caring about your marriage enough to, one, seek some help, and then two, like put on this hat of like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to be the best wife I can be. I wish more people took that mentality of like this matters to me, and I'm going to put in the work, and I'm going to make an investment and put in some effort here to figure this stuff out. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard work. You
Yeah.
have to be willing to dig in and do the work.
Yeah, you really do. And even my wife and I go to therapy. Like one of the very first things we did as a couple is we found a therapist, and we're like, this is one of those tools we want to have in our tool belt.
Yep.
And every couple of months we go in and we just make sure that we're doing all right. And we talk about some stuff that's going on in our relationship. And so good for you for building out those tools. Um, so, okay, now let's fast forward. So you're like, okay, I see an opportunity here where I can level up as a wife. You joined the Epic Wives experiment. And what was your experience?
So the very first week, it was hard for me the very first week because I was doing the experiments and I wasn't seeing anything. And I
Yeah.
know that's not the purpose of doing the experiments, but I thought, okay, we're 3 years into counseling. We're working on our communication. Like we're finally to a point where we can talk to each other and not have things blow up.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, okay, we had some issues past Christmas and beginning of the year. And so we were kind of coming to a head of all of that.
Yep.
So when I found this, I thought, okay, I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to see where it takes me. And so the first week we did the notes, and really the notes is what really stuck out to me, because that was like an eye opener for me, because my husband has always said that his top love language is words of affirmation.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, that's like one of my bottom, but I can work on that. That was something that I had, or that our counselor was having me work on. And so I thought I was doing a pretty good job, but apparently I wasn't. So when sticky notes came and there wasn't any response, I thought, okay, well, maybe it's not words of affirmation. And then the end of the week, we had a session. And so I go to individual and my husband goes to individual, and then we go to marriage
Uh-huh.
counseling. And so he had a meeting with his counselor before our session together. And in our session together, it came out that he really appreciated the notes. But because we were kind of in a gridlock with each other, he didn't know how to approach me about it.
Yeah.
And so knowing that even though there was no response from him up until that point, that it was still making a difference, like it gave me hope that, okay, this is something small that I can do, that when we do get into those moments of gridlock, that I know when I write him a note or the words of affirmation that he needs, that I know that it is appreciated.
Oh, that's awesome. I love
So
that.
just those little things, and the experiments were such that, these are all things that I've talked about with my counselor, but there's never been a try this or try this or this. And so the experiments for me, they were good for me, because I'm someone that I will dig in and do all the work I need to do on my own. But when it comes to doing something for something else, I need a little direction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's one of the things that we found a lot, is that people love learning principles, but then
mhm,
turning a principle into a tactical application there's sometimes a bit of a gap there. It's hard to know exactly, how do I put this principle into action and so I can actually see results.
yeah,
And that's exactly why we built the Epic Wives experiment, is because nothing that we teach is really like revolutionary. There's nothing that we talk about in there that you aren't at least familiar with.
mhm,
But then when we get into the application and you actually start doing the experiments, that's when the results come. And so that's awesome. I love that just in that first week, you saw a little bit of a switch flip, not only for you, but for him as well.
yes. And
That's
then from
cool.
there, like, it was funny because each week after, it was almost like that was just the natural progression in our relationship. So when the second week came out and it was, um,
Take responsibility.
yes, taking
Yep.
responsibility, like I had already started to back off before, like, I
Yeah.
mean, this was like a year in the making for me. I realized that, we homeschooled for 12 years.
Wow.
And my husband, recently he's had some aha moments in his sessions, and he realized that he avoids, and by his avoiding, he's a workaholic. And so
Mm,
that left me to do
a lot.
everything.
Yeah.
And so for 12 years, that's what this was. Our children, I educated our children and took care of the house and paid the bills, and he just provided financially. So this last year, I've had to take a step back and say, I need you to do this. I need you to be responsible for this. And I'm not going to save you.
Right.
So
Hard thing to
I-
do.
it is a hard thing. And I've been having to do that with my son, who is very much like my husband.
Uh-huh.
And it's so hard because you want them to be functioning members of society, and you don't want them to be 40-something-year-old men doing what they're doing
Yeah.
as 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
So it's been good for me, not only in my relationship with my husband, but also my relationship with my son.
Oh, that's
Because
awesome.
parenting girls is totally different from parenting boys.
That's hilarious.
So from there, it just, from the responsibility, and my husband knows that, okay, when she asks me for something, that's it. Like, it's up to me to do it. She's not going to ask me again.
Yeah.
And then week 3 was
Admiration.
admiration.
Uh-huh.
And that just naturally, like, I don't know. I feel like I could have skipped over week 2 because that had already been happening for us.
Yeah.
So from our notes to the admiration, like it was just a natural progression for
Oh,
us.
that's so good.
And then week 4, like that just came naturally.
Oh, that's great.
So
So what changes did you see in yourself? Like what do you think is the most important shift that you experienced for you?
so for myself, it it was definitely the notes
Uh-huh.
and expressing more appreciation and gratitude and looking for the things that he was doing right, taking off the rose or putting on the rose colored glasses.
Yeah.
So that was probably my biggest shift because I was coming from a mentality of I have done this by myself for so long and I can't do this by myself
Right.
anymore. And so that was something that my counselor was having me actually work on. But going into this experiment and having it all laid out, like it was what I needed to get me to that next level.
And what were the things you started seeing your husband doing that you were missing when you didn't have those rose-colored glasses on?
You know, between the notes and working through our gridlock, he he just naturally started to do more of those things that he knew I needed.
Mm,
So it was easier for me to see what he was doing more than just taking out the garbage or
right.
dealing with our 13-year-old son that drives me up the wall. But I mean, he just naturally started to be more helpful. And I am a high sensing person
Uh-huh.
and I am very easily on edge because my environment, I need a lot of quiet and peace.
Yeah.
And so, and organization, like I don't function well in chaos. And so he is extremely ADHD.
Yeah. And
So
he's the
everything,
source of a lot of the chaos in your
he is
life.
the source of a lot of
Yeah,
chaos.
yeah.
And so he recognized that, okay, there are small things that I can do that can help her. And so in between all of my acknowledging the little things that he was doing before boosted him to do more.
More. Oh, I love
And it was
that.
easier for me to see the things that he was doing more of.
Right. And then when you see that he's making those efforts, the other things that he's maybe not doing as well don't
It,
carry as much weight. Yeah.
yep,
That's awesome.
yep.
That sounds like it sounds like you guys made some really great progress. That's
We did.
phenomenal.
We did. And like I said, it was a long time coming.
Good. I'm glad.
So,
So, I think my last real question for you is if you could like sit down and have a conversation with you like a month and a half ago or somebody like you,
mhm.
and they saw the Epic Wives experiment kind of pop up on their radar and they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. What would you, if you could go back in time and tell that person one thing, what would you tell them if they're like on the fence about signing?
On the fence, I would say do it. And if you're finding that you're struggling, dig deep into why you're struggling
Mm, yeah.
because it's there for a reason. It's that shadow work. Dig deeper, but do it.
What do you mean it's there for a reason?
So the struggle, there's something deeper that's holding you back that you may not have brought to the surface yet. So for me, I don't know what my hangup with words of affirmation with my husband was, but looking back, it was probably that there was still some resentment there for all the years that I had to do everything for myself. And so it
Mm,
was harder for me to be able to acknowledge the things that he was doing right. And so, for example, the note that was turn a conflict into a compliment was his work. It was really hard for me to be able to turn his ability to work as long as he worked and as many hours as he worked into a compliment.
Yeah.
My compliment to him was, I know that you work so hard so that you can provide the luxurious life that we live. And I appreciate it. And so for him to hear that in place of, God, I'm so sick of you working all the
Yeah.
time. For him, it switched. So it's that if there's something you're really struggling with, dig deeper for yourself and see what it is that you're hung up on.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
does that
awesome.
make sense?
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I think what it boils down to is the obstacle that you're facing is actually an opportunity for you to grow.
Yes.
And if you avoid the obstacle and run away from it, you never get to experience the growth
Yep.
and then the freedom that comes with that growth.
Yeah.
So it seems like for you, the Epic Wives experiment gave you the tools to kind of confront some of the obstacles you were bumping into. And in confronting them, you grew stronger and more capable, such that the obstacle became basically like a stepping stone for you to kind of advance down the path instead of prevent you from moving forward. That's awesome.
Yep.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your experience with me. It means a lot.
Well, thank you for providing it.
Yeah, of course.